Hey folks, good morning. This is Lenny Lawson, the Car Guru. I have a question for you. What makes you loyal to a business? There's my phone going off. What does make you loyal to a business? Speaking of phones, I'm loyal to Apple. And I was anti-Apple guy. When Apple first came out with their early computers, I was an IBM Microsoft person because everything that we used in the dealership was either had to be a PC and it had to run some version of Windows. Now, the cell phone thing affected me just like it affected all of you. I mean, I don't know how you got into it. My first cell phone was in a bag. It was a Motorola device, and it actually looked like a lady's purse. You might have had one. I would put it in my car, plug it into the power into the cigarette lighter, and put an antenna, like a CB antenna, on top of my vehicle. And that was my cell phone. I remember the first portable phone that I saw was at an auto auction. And I thought it was so cool because it was portable. But you certainly couldn't put it in your pocket. It was massive. I mean, I don't know what to compare it to. Pretty good sized book. But yeah, it was portable. You could walk around. You could talk to people when you're out there looking at cars. I just thought that was pretty cool. And of course, my first portable cell phone, I mean, we all went through that. It was flip phones, the StarTAC, I think it was called by Motorola. And then the phones got really small. I remember this little Nokia phone that I had. I mean, it was not a whole lot bigger than a couple matchbooks. And I felt so silly using it. But then BlackBerry came out. And I was exposed to BlackBerry, believe it or not, by a guy named Roger Clemens. Roger Clemens, famous baseball player, pitcher for Boston and the New York Yankees, and then finally the Astros. Well, his son, Kobe Clemens, ended up playing baseball for a local farm team, the Greenville Astros. And one day I got a phone call from the manager of the Greenville Astros. It's a regional team. They play the Johnson City Cardinals or whatever they are, and then the Kingsport. There was a group of teams, and I guess they still exist to some degree. But this was the farm system for the Houston Astros, the one in Greenville. And so his son was playing here, and I got a call from the general manager asking if I would be willing to provide Kobe and his dad, Roger, with something to drive when Roger was in town visiting his son and watching baseball games. And I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. So my son and myself and my wife, my two daughters, we met Roger Clemens when his jet landed at the Greenville airport. We picked him up, and it was quite a thrill, especially for my son because he was a big Boston fan, and he liked baseball a lot more than I did. But how could you not be a fan of Roger Clemens at that time? And so we got to know each other just a little bit. I was providing him with wheels, and he was being very nice, and he invited me to play golf. We ended up playing golf 3 or 4 times and just had an absolute ball. Felt like it was really cool sitting in a golf cart beside a guy that year he was going to make $32 million. So anyway, he was a big BlackBerry fan, and I wasn't that familiar with BlackBerry. He had BlackBerry pagers that he would use, and he could text message through the pagers. So I went down, I don't know how much long, a couple months I went down when BlackBerry phones came out, and I said, I'm going to try one of these things, and did that. And that was a stage that I went through. And then I decided to try the iPhone at some point. And I fell hook, line, and sinker for the iPhone. Then it came out with the iPad. And then I got a Mac. And now all I have are Apple devices. Everything from the earbuds to, I was trying to find my old iPod the other day, and I can't find it. I'm distraught right now. But I keep them. When they stop working, I just put them up for posterity. I converted my parents. I converted my girls, my son. We all used Apple devices. But why? Why do we? Well, there are 5 things that basically, I call them essentials, that a business has to be really good at. Let's put it this way. They have to be at least average on 3 of them, but they have to be fantastic on 2 of them to be able to be competitive and to survive. And those five things are as follows. Number one, they have to have great products. Number two, they have to price those products commensurate with the value that they are perceived at. If it's a high quality thing, then people will pay for it. If it's low quality, then they can't charge as much, right? So you've got product and you've got price. Thirdly, you've got service. What kind of service do they provide? And then you have the experience. What is it like doing business with these people? How easy do they make it? How fun do they make it? And then the final thing is access. How accessible is this business? From a retail standpoint, in a small town like where I live, if you have a retail business, you have to be visible. But you don't have to be as visible as you used to be, especially if you rely a lot on the internet sales. I mean, quite frankly, you can build a car dealership just about anywhere. Used to, it had to be on the main thoroughfare. I don't think it has to anymore, especially if it's a used car business, because so much of that business is accessible through the internet. So the internet has changed the whole game from an accessibility standpoint for a lot of businesses. Now, I remember when I sold some property to pals. They wanted to put a store in Greenville. They had been negotiating with some other property owners near me, and so I found out about that and was able to sell them a piece of property. And it's one of their, I think it's in the top 10 as far as Pals restaurants. I think they have mid-30s now. Not sure exactly how many stores they have. But if you're not from here, Pals is a fast food drive-through. They have no sit-in type of situation. Well, they do. I take that back. There's one in Greenville where you can actually eat inside, but all the main high volume ones are actually drive-throughs. They've figured out the perfect formula for fast food. But they told me a long time ago that they want to be where the competition is. Like, I had a great location right next to my Ford dealership, and they did a study to see whether or not it would be a good location for a Pals. And it just didn't meet their criteria because there's no McDonald's here. There's no Wendy's here. I mean, there is in the town, but not right here. They want to be in the middle of the competition because it brings them more fast food business. So you need to understand what the access requirements are for your particular business. But price, product, service, access, and experience, those are the things that differentiate you or have the potential to differentiate you from your competitors. So as an example in the car business, I am approximately 30 miles from Johnson City. And if I want somebody to come to my Ford dealership in Greenville, as opposed to shopping at the dealership in their hometown, they have to have a reason. And it has to be one of those 5 attributes. It has to be the product, which it's not, because you can buy a Ford, just like all the Fords that I have in my inventory or the Nissans that I have in inventory. You can buy them just about any place, at any Ford dealership or Nissan dealership. What about price? Well, you advertise and you market yourself as the low-price alternative, that you have the lowest prices, right? But is that always the case? With all the other things that we talk about on this program, all the deception that's out there with price, where you have to be very careful if you're buying something online because you got to read the disclaimer. You've got to understand what the fine print says. I can't tell you how many people go to certain dealerships and then they leave mad because when they got the final price, it was $4,000 or $5,000 more. So, I can differentiate myself by price, but not that much. There's not a whole lot of room to work with when it comes with the price. So what are the other attributes that I can compete on that's going to get somebody to drive here, as opposed to shopping in Kingsport or Johnson City or Morristown or whatever? 40%, sometimes 50% of our business in Greenville comes from outside of Greenville. People driving to my dealership or to the other dealerships in Greenville to buy cars. Why do they do that? Well, because of one of those 5 things. And it's usually not product. It could be availability of product. It could be that they just happen to have something that you want. But most of the time it has to do with price or the perceived difference in price. And, of course, those perceptions can be wrong. The other things are access, experience, and service. Now, can one dealership make buying a car more fun than another? Can they differentiate themselves based on the service that they provide? And, from an access standpoint, if you live 50 miles from here, then access to me is not great because you have to drive here unless we deliver it to your house, which we can do. We do all the time. But so what can I compete on? There's only really three things: price, experience, and service. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. We had a customer the other day that bought a new Nissan from us, and he had been put through the ringer at another dealership. It was in his words, a horrible experience, but he still wanted to buy a Nissan. A lot of people, if they have a really bad experience at a certain brand of dealership, they'll not only abandon that dealership, they'll abandon that brand. Said, I'm not going to go through that again. I'm going to go buy a Honda. Different people react differently. But this particular guy was determined to get a Nissan Rogue. He just liked it. He liked it better than the CR-V. He liked it better than the RAV4. I think he was looking at a Hyundai Santa Fe as well, but he wanted a Nissan. So he had seen our advertisements and said, well, Greenville's not that far away. I'll go to Greenville. And just talking to him in the showroom, he could not say enough good things about his buying experience. Now, what got him down here? A bad experience. What did he love about us? A great experience. What about price? Well, there was some deception involved at the other place. He felt like it was a lot more straightforward here, the way the price was handled. So there's a lot of things. Now, what good does that do us? Well, we gained a customer. Also, we gained an advocate. We gained somebody who will, for lack of a better word, bird dog for us. They'll send customers to us, hopefully, because of the experience that they had. Word of mouth advertising is a very powerful thing. But so is quality service. If I sell somebody a car and they bring it back for all their oil changes, anytime they have a problem, they bring it back to us, we fix it. Even after it runs out of warranty, they continue to come back because they've developed a comfort zone with this business. They love the service. Would that get somebody to buy a car from you? Well, the statistics prove that if you have a very satisfied customer through your service department, you have an 85% chance of them buying a car from you again. Well, why not 100%? Because some people just want something different. They want to buy a different, some new model comes out that they just really love, and they want that. And that's okay. But man, I'll take 85% all day because the national average is around 30% loyalty. That's not good. And typically what runs people off is the lack of service, and it's just not a good experience doing business. There's nothing cool about doing business with them. I do business with a company called Colonel Littleton, and they make leather stuff, and I like leather stuff. Everything from, I've got a planner here that I use, that I live in, basically, on my desk, and it's wrapped in Colonel Littleton leather. There's a portfolio over here that I use. I have a Colonel Littleton briefcase. I have a bracelet made out of leather by Colonel Littleton and has my son's name on it. I have a leather duffel bag with my initials on it from Colonel Littleton. I probably am on their favorite customer list. Now, is this leather, and it's expensive stuff. Go to their website, colonellittleton.com. This is not inexpensive stuff. The first thing I bought was at a Mast General store in, I think it was Asheville, North Carolina. And I saw this portfolio, this leather portfolio, pulled it out of there, Colonel Littleton. I said, $180? It's crazy. I bought it. It just felt good, and it really smelled good. And that was the first of many purchases. So I just ordered some new pads to go into my portfolio. Well, like a notepad, 8.5 by 11 notepad. Every time I order something from Colonel Littleton, I get a little bag. And in that bag is a leather coaster and a moon pie and a story about moon pies. It's just, what's the big deal? It's just different. And there's all kinds of little marketing things in here for different products that he sells, and there's some famous sayings of the Colonel. But I just love. I've got those coasters all over the place, stamped. It's got an embossed Colonel Littleton, the cross swords, the Great American Leather Company. I'm a fan, and I recommend that people go there and buy stuff, even though it is expensive. But they've got me, just like Apple does, and there's a reason. The primary reason that I like Colonel Littleton is quality. Quality of what? The product. And as you can tell, even though it's something that you order online, I kind of like the experience. Their website is just really nice. And he has videos of him demonstrating his bags and different things that they sell. I mean, who would have thought of something like that? Little leather company in Linville, Tennessee. I think that's just awesome. So I'm a customer and I'm an advocate. Here I am talking about it on my radio show. And some of you might just go to colonellittleton.com. Be sure to give me a plug there. Maybe they'll give me some free merchandise, maybe a discount coupon. But I'll tell you this, it is not price that lures me to Colonel Littleton. It's product, service, and experience. And, of course, it's pretty easy, so the access is pretty good, too. As I was saying, you have to be at least average on 3 of the attributes. And really, you have to be really good at one and fantastic at one. And in my book, Colonel Littleton is fantastic when it comes to product. Okay, I'm going to take my last break. I'll be back here in just a minute. So I've got bus duty today. My wife's out of town. She went to see her mother down in Lenore City. So I get to get in line at the school, pick up 2 of my grandkids at that school. That's the school where my wife taught for 17 years. So I pick them up. They're going to want a snack, according to my wife. So I got to go take them to get a snack. Then we go to my house for about an hour and a half. And then I watch the clock. And then when that hour and a half is elapsed, I got to take those 2 grandkids to my daughter at the dealership, drop them off, then pick up my other daughter's kids at the daycare. And one of those is, Leo is 3, and Bonnie is just a little over 1. Maybe she's 18 months now. I don't know. But I got to pick them up. Then I have to take them out to my daughter's house and sit there with them for about 3 hours. Oh, boy. So, that's just what you do, right? And I was thinking about the vehicles that we use to transport these yahoos. The best vehicle, I think, my opinion, if you've got young kids, the very best vehicle to drive is a minivan. It could be a Honda. It could be a Toyota. I don't recommend the Kia. I think they're goofy looking. But, it needs to be one of those 2 vans. Maybe what does Chrysler still sell one, Town and Country? So, because it just makes sense, with the power sliding doors, the kids can get up in them. There's plenty of seats. There's pass-throughs that they can walk through. It's just great. How come everybody doesn't buy those? Well, I know my wife said, I'm never going to drive another minivan. Once she graduated from the minivan stage, which would have been in the late 80s up through the 90s. She was probably driving a Chevy Astro van or that funky-looking Lumina APV minivan that GM had. We had the worst minivans. Chrysler had it the best, and then once Toyota and Honda figured out how to make minivans that made sense, they dominate. And if I were out buying a minivan today, it'd be a Honda. And so, anyway, what's it called? Honda Odyssey. That's right. I wish I was picking them up in an Odyssey, but no. No, my daughters have to drive Expeditions. And, Expedition is just a really big body-on-frame vehicle, and all these young women, that's all they want to drive is Suburbans, Tahoes, Expeditions, Sequoias. It has to be big. It has to suck a lot of gas. And it has to be as inconvenient as heck to get little kids in them, with the car seats and all that stuff. So I just don't get it. But that just shows you how things have changed. You know, when I was growing up, my mom, most of the time, she drove two-door cars. She didn't care if it was inconvenient for me to get in the back seat. My dad was the one that drove station wagons all the time. I always thought that was a little strange. Dad, why don't you drive a Camaro or something cool? No, I wanted a state wagon. You know, so I remember riding one time on vacation. Well, it was a short vacation. We didn't have to go too far. We were going to go to this lake and camp out. And he had a station wagon, of course, and we had to take all of our camping equipment and a canoe. So this canoe is stuck in the back of this station wagon. And after you got the canoe in there were just enough seats and room for 3 people in the front seat. The back seat had to be folded down. So where did Lenny get to sit? Well, Lenny was the youngest one on the totem pole. So Lenny got to ride in the canoe on top of some seat cushions for about 150 miles, 300 miles round trip. Of course, I was a lot more flexible back then than I am now. It's probably why I ended up needing a new hip. Okay, I'm going to take another 24-hour break, and I'll see you next time on the next My Car Guru.